In just 24 hours, 3 states have been hit by anti-Semitic attacks. In Sydney's east, police thwarted a potential firebombing, while F the Jews was graffitied on cars and homes.
In Perth, F the Jews and a SWAT sticker was graffitied on a home about 6 k's from the CBD in the affluent suburb of Dalkeith.
And in Melbourne, the home of a prominent Jewish Australian was tagged in scenes reminiscent of Nazi Germany. Joining us now is Executive Council of Australian Jewry CEO, Alex Ryvchin. Alex, it's our contention, we've talked about it earlier in the program, that we now have a sustained campaign of terror being waged against Jewish Australians right across the country. Are we wrong?
No, you're not wrong, and it's demonstrably true. We've seen a progression from October 7 where words like F the Jews were chanted in the streets with impunity, and now those same words are being daubed on burning buildings. We're now seeing on a near daily basis the Jewish community and Australians waking up to seeing more targeted attacks on the Jewish community, more burning cars, burning kindergartens, daubed cars. All of these things are happening with a terrifying frequency. And then on top of all that, we saw the disruption of a large-scale terror attack, which would have been utterly devastating for all of Australia, which would have left this country permanently changed. So we are in the throes of a terrible movement in this country of anti-Semitism. And it's not clear whether this is coordinated from abroad, whether these are lone actors with no connection to one another, feeding off each other, being inspired by one another. But what is happening in our country right now is truly terrifying. It's a bad moment for the Jewish community. I feel like the community has been remarkably strong and resilient in the face of everything that's been thrown at it, from the hate preachers to the boycotts and the doxers and the Australian Greens and all of these phenomena. But now we're at a point where our pride is being subsumed by fear. And a fear of what will come. Kids are going back to school now, and there are conversations all around the country about whether it's safe to be sending our kids to school. What level of security do we need at our kindergartens and schools and so forth? I mean, this is the reality of being Jewish in Australia right now.
I can't even imagine what it's like. It just, every day it's something new now. It's gone beyond a crisis, Alex. Now, let's talk about the hostages, because Hamas has released 3 more Israeli hostages overnight, including Yarden Bibas, whose wife and children remain hostages in Gaza. Alex, so the father has been freed, but the reality is that we just don't know if the 2 little kids and their mum are still alive. What an unfathomable situation.
It's a horrific situation, and Israel has said that they have grave concerns about the welfare of the 2 little children and the mother. The fact that they weren't released in the earlier rounds, I think, bodes rather poorly for the future of this family. It's a terrifying situation that they're in. And the fact that the father is now free, but knowing that the fate of his children and his wife is so precarious at the moment, it's a horrific situation to be in. But this is what's before the Israeli people right now. They're in a position where they are trying to retrieve the lives, redeem the lives of innocent civilians, of children and women and non-combatants in most cases. And in exchange, they're giving up the worst human beings on the earth, terrorists, shameless killers. And the great irony is that most societies would want to rid themselves of these sorts of people, whereas the Palestinians in Gaza are exchanging on higher terms to get back killers who have killed more people. It's crazy, but this is the situation Israel finds itself in, and this is why it is a state and a people that values life, and these are the lengths it will go to redeem life, or even the hope of redeeming life.
Yeah, not only is the proportion of prisoners released completely out of whack, but for Hamas to drip feed information to families who have been for 15, 16 months wondering if their loved ones are even alive just beggars belief that they would be called partners in peace. I want to talk to you about Jewish university students here in Australia who are victims of anti-Semitic attacks or racism. They'll now be able to submit their complaints to a new National Student Ombudsman. Alex, forgive my cynicism, but I can't imagine Jewish students are going to find much comfort in yet another layer of bureaucracy. I would have thought that where there's anti-Semitism on university campuses, you expel the anti-Semites. And I could name a few vice-chancellors who could do with the boot as well. But no, we've got a National Student Ombudsman who will write up reports. What do you think about this?
I think that the answer to the grave situation on university campuses is multifaceted. I think the Ombudsman might be able to play a constructive role in at least being a body that is set up to hear the complaints of Jewish students. The first problem that we encountered all the way through was that Jewish students were fearful of speaking up because when they tried to report something, they were often ridiculed, their complaints were dismissed or denied. In some cases, they feared retribution from fellow students or for their marks to be affected as a result. So to create this body that actually has an understanding of anti-Semitism, and I hope it will develop that understanding. I've actually spoken to that organisation myself and delivered anti-Semitism training. Hopefully they'll be equipped to actually receive these complaints and then deal with them accordingly. But you're absolutely right. Without enforcement of the law, without strict consequences for those that violate the freedoms and rights of Jewish students, nothing will change.
No, it's just shocking. Alex, we're almost out of time, but we want to ask you, the Prime Minister maintains that he was not told of the caravan terror plot, but will not say when he found out. Do you think it's strange that the leader of the country didn't know about this? I mean, this could have killed hundreds of Jews and even Australians in this country.
I find it incredibly odd, and obviously the Jewish community was late in finding out, and I think that the police made certain decisions from an operational point of view, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, I know that the police want nothing more than to keep Australians safe. They're not interested in political matters, they're only interested in the safety and welfare of Australians. So I defer to them on these matters, but when you have a national crisis, when you have a potential terror attack of this scale and force, one would think that the Prime Minister and the Jewish community that would have been primarily affected ought to have been informed early on.
Absolutely. Alex Ryvchin, we always appreciate you joining us on the show. Thank you so much for your time this evening.